So, imagine you are driving a custom-built Formula One car at like 200 miles an hour.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You are gripping the wheel, the engine is roaring, you're weaving through traffic, and everything feels completely under control.
Right, you're totally in the zone.
Exactly. And then suddenly the steering wheel just snaps off in your hands.
Oh, man. Total disaster.
Total immediate collapse. I mean, the car careens straight into the wall before you even have a chance to hit the brakes.
Yeah, that's game over.
And that is exactly what happened to the Detroit Pistons in Game 3 of their playoff series. I mean, in the mere 9 minutes their star player sat on the bench, they played statistically the worst basketball in modern NBA history.
It really was hard to watch.
So, welcome to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you are here with us today. Our mission for this discussion is to extract the absolute most crucial insights from these recent, incredibly high-stakes playoff battles.
Because there's a lot to unpack.
There really is. We are going to look at why certain teams are surviving and why others are getting completely dismantled. And then we're going to pivot to a day that will permanently alter the future of the league, which is the NBA draft lottery today.
The best day of the year for half the league.
For sure. Because right now, for you listening, you have to realize everything we're watching, every win, every blown lead, every single draft projection, it all revolves around one single concept, and that's margins.
Margins, yeah. It is the perfect lens for this entire playoff landscape right now.
Right.
Because when you look across the league, you see two distinctly different realities playing out on the court. I mean, you have some teams surviving on the absolute thinnest of margins.
Same razor thin.
Exactly. They're literally one missed rotation or, one twisted ankle away from their entire season just collapsing.
Yeah.
And then on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, you have franchises that have engineered this overwhelming wave of depth and versatility. Their opponents are simply drowning.
They just suffocate them.
Right. They don't need thin margins because they've built a roster with zero structural gaps.
Okay, well, let's unpack that survival mode first, because nobody in the league right now is clinging to life quite like the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh, absolutely not.
Game 3 against the Detroit Pistons. I mean, the Cavs absolutely had to have this one, and they eventually pulled out a 116-109 victory.
They barely scraped by.
Barely. And they had to win because they were staring down the barrel of a 3-0 deficit. And as you know, dropping to 3-0 is basically an unwritten death sentence in this league.
Yeah, no team has ever climbed out of that hole. Ever.
Never. So the desperation from Cleveland was just palpable right from the opening tip.
It had to be. I mean, when you are on the brink of elimination, the playbook shrinks.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you don't need some complex 12-step strategic overhaul from the coaching staff.
Yeah.
You just need your best players to become undeniable forces of nature.
Right, just go get a bucket.
Exactly. And Cleveland's stars delivered a performance that, frankly, saved their season and maybe even the current iteration of this roster.
And how? I mean, Donovan Mitchell was an absolute wrecking ball. He puts up 35 points and 10 rebounds.
It was everywhere.
But what really stood out to me was where he was doing his damage. He hit 9 of his 12 shots in the paint.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right. He wasn't out there settling for heavily contested step-back perimeter jumpers. He was just putting his head down, absorbing serious physical contact, and forcing the issue right at the rim.
Which is exactly what they needed him to do.
So why was that so critical for Cleveland's offense in this specific game?
Because it fundamentally changes the entire geometry of the Detroit defense. I mean, when Donovan Mitchell is living in the paint, the Pistons cannot stay attached to Cleveland's shooters.
They have to collapse.
Right. The perimeter defenders instinctively take 2 or 3 steps inward to pack the paint and stop the bleeding at the rim. And once Detroit's defense collapses inward like that, the floor just opens up. It creates passing lanes. But, the real story of survival on the margins came late in the fourth quarter.
Oh, when it slowed down into a half-court slugfest.
Exactly.
Which brings us to James Harden. I was watching the fourth quarter, and it looked like Harden was completely ignoring the play calls from the bench just to hunt specific players.
He absolutely was.
Was that a set strategy, or was Harden just improvising out there?
Well, that's the beauty of a veteran like Harden in survival mode. It's a bit of both, but mostly it's his unmatched basketball IQ recognizing a structural flaw in the defense.
Right.
Harden had 9 critical points in the fourth quarter, and it was entirely based on mismatch hunting. Every single time Duncan Robinson was on the floor for Detroit, Harden's eyes must have just lit up.
He was targeting him mercilessly.
He would demand a screen to force a switch, making sure Robinson was the one guarding him.
So for you listening who might be wondering, why pick on Duncan Robinson? I mean, he's a solid player. Why is Harden isolating him specifically?
It really comes down to foot speed and center of gravity.
Mm.
Robinson is an elite shooter, sure, but defensively, his lateral quickness is just a fraction of a second too slow to contain a master of isolation like Harden.
And Harden knows this.
Oh, he absolutely knows it. So he gets Robinson on an island, uses a series of hesitations to freeze him, blows past him, and gets to his floater in the lane.
It was a clinic.
And then, he delivered the absolute dagger. Under 30 seconds left, he isolates against Tobias Harris, another player with slower lateral movement.
Oh, I remember this shot.
Yeah, he hits this cold-blooded step-back three over his outstretched arm to put Cleveland up 4. It was just surgical.
It was vintage Harden. But let's pause here because this is where the math of this game gets really weird for me.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that the Pistons completely collapsed when Cade Cunningham went to the bench.
All right.
I've got the numbers right here. Cade was spectacular. A massive triple-double, 27 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists.
He's playing out of his mind.
But when he sat down, things got incredibly dark for Detroit.
Yeah, that is the non-Cade collapse.
Mm-hmm.
When Cade was on the floor running the show, the Pistons were actually winning.
Really?
Yeah, they outscored the Cavaliers by 6 points in his 38 minutes of action. But I need you to hear this specific statistic to understand how thin the margins were.
Hit me.
In the mere 9 minutes that Cade sat on the bench to catch his breath, the Pistons had a minus 53.3 net rating.
Okay, wait. A minus 53.3.
Yes.
For those of us who don't live in the analytics spreadsheets, remind us exactly how a net rating is calculated. I mean, what does a minus 53 actually mean in practical terms on the basketball court?
Sure.
Because to me, that sounds exactly like that Formula One car losing its steering wheel.
That analogy is spot on. So net rating measures a team's point differential per 100 possessions.
Okay.
So a minus 53.3 net rating means that if the Pistons had played at that exact level of incompetence for a full 100 possessions, they would have lost the game by 53 points.
Wow, that is staggering.
It is a catastrophic failure of offense. I mean, they couldn't initiate sets, they couldn't get the ball past half court without panicking, and they basically couldn't generate an open look to save their lives.
And a huge part of that was what Max Struss was doing defensively for Cleveland, right? He was picking Cade up 94 feet from the basket, like right off the inbound pass.
Yes, the full court pressure from Struss was really the quiet MVP of this game.
Yeah, I thought so too.
It wasn't just about forcing the 8 turnovers that Cade ultimately committed. It's about what 94-foot pressure does to a team's offensive mechanics.
It just drains the clock.
Exactly. When Struss is hounding Cade in the backcourt, it takes Detroit 8 to 10 seconds just to cross half court. By the time they initiate their offensive set, the shot clock is already at 14 seconds.
Right, so they're rushing everything.
It burns time, it exhausts your superstar, and it completely disrupts the rhythm of the role players.
So Detroit falls apart without Cade. Cleveland capitalizes, and the Cavs fans are all breathing a massive sigh of relief. Right, but hold on a second. I am looking at this box score. And I'm going to push back a little on the celebration happening in Cleveland right now.
Oh, I agree.
Because if you look closely, there are massive glowing red flags. Cleveland shot 69% from the floor in the first half.
It's insane.
69%. Usually, if you tell me a team shoots nearly 70% in a half, I assume they are up by 30 points, and the starters are resting on the bench with ice packs.
You'd think so.
But they still only won this game by 7 points. Doesn't that mean something else was going catastrophically wrong for the Cavaliers?
It is the single most important question coming out of this game, and you are entirely right to be skeptical about Cleveland.
Thank you.
The reason the game was a dogfight, despite a historic shooting performance, comes down to the dirty work of the playoffs.
Rebounding.
Rebounding. The Pistons lost the game on the scoreboard, but they absolutely dominated the physical battle for possessions. Detroit grabbed 17 offensive rebounds.
Wow.
Cleveland only managed 5.
17 offensive rebounds. That is 17 extra possessions, 17 extra bullets in the chamber for Detroit.
Exactly.
How does a discrepancy like that even happen? Were the Cavs just not trying? Or is there a structural issue here?
Oh, it's heavily structural. To combat Cade Cunningham's pick-and-roll mastery, the Cavaliers were forced to trap him high up by the three-point line.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. But when you pull your big men guys like Jarrett Allen or Evan Mobley out to the perimeter to trap the ball handler, you leave the paint completely unprotected.
Leaving the door wide open.
Basically. Jalen Duren, Detroit center, was essentially left alone under the basket to just feast on the glass. The Cavs were sacrificing their rebounding to try and slow down Cade.
And that is a terrifying reality for Cleveland. You cannot win a 7-game series giving a team like Detroit that many extra opportunities.
No, you can't.
I mean, you cannot rely on shooting 70% from the floor just to offset a massive rebounding deficit.
Precisely. If Cleveland doesn't fix their defensive rebounding rotations, Detroit remains firmly in control of this series.
Yeah.
The margins for Cleveland are virtually non-existent right now. I mean, they are surviving, yes, but they are gasping for air.
Cleveland barely survived because their margins are razor thin when their stars sit or when their bigs get pulled to the perimeter. But what happens when a front office purposefully engineers a roster to have absolutely no margins of error?
You get a juggernaut.
Right. What happens when a team is designed so flawlessly that losing a superstar doesn't even make a dent? You get the Oklahoma City Thunder.
The Thunder are the absolute antithesis of the Cavaliers right now.
Night and day.
They don't just survive games. They suffocate their opponents with wave after wave of overwhelming depth.
Suffocation is the exact right word. I mean, Game 3, OKC absolutely destroys the Los Angeles Lakers, 131-108 to go up 3-0 in the series.
A total blowout.
And the wild irony of this 23-point blowout is that the Lakers' defensive strategy actually worked flawlessly.
It really did. J.J. Redick and the Lakers coaching staff drew up a masterful game plan for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
They executed it perfectly.
They decided they were not going to let SGA be the one to beat them. They threw multiple bodies at him every single time he touched the ball. They had Marcus Smart executing incredible ball denial defense off the ball, and they forced Shai into a miserable shooting night.
Right. He went 7 for 20 from the floor, finishing with 23 points.
Yeah.
For an MVP candidate, you look at that stat line and you think, well, the Lakers must have won this game.
But it didn't matter at all.
Not at all. Playing defense against OKC is like trying to patch a leaking pipe with your bare hands.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
You know, you use both hands to plug the SGA leak. You think you've stopped the flood, but because of their incredible floor spacing and depth, the water pressure immediately bursts through 2 other holes you can't cover.
You run out of hands.
You literally don't have enough hands to stop them. The Lakers successfully shut down SGA, and immediately, Ajay Mitchell and Cason Wallace just devour them.
That leaking pipe analogy captures their offensive philosophy perfectly. The pressure is just constant.
Yeah.
Ajay Mitchell exploded off the bench for 24 points and 10 assists. He was running high pick and rolls, dissecting the defense, tossing perfect lobs to Isaiah Hartenstein, and finishing through contact at the rim.
He looked unstoppable.
And then Cason Wallace dropped 16 points, including a massive 11-point barrage in the first quarter that completely demoralized the Lakers early on.
The game fell over in the first quarter.
The Lakers expended all their physical and mental energy just trying to stop Shai, and the Thunder's secondary players simply picked the lock.
And we haven't even talked about the player who I think is the scariest part of this entire Thunder machine, Chet Holmgren.
Oh, man. Chet's development curve is terrifying for the rest of the NBA.
It really is.
Coming into the league, we knew he was going to be a defensive anchor. We knew he would swat shots and intimidate drivers at the rim.
Right.
But his offensive leap, the sophistication of his scoring, is what elevates OKC into a historic juggernaut.
He's on another level.
He finished this game with 18 points and 9 rebounds, but it's how he's scoring that blew my mind. He isn't just catching dump-off passes or shooting spot-up threes.
No, he's creating his own shot.
He is utilizing highly advanced step-through moves in the paint against elite defenders.
Okay, explain that step-through move for us, because watching a 7-footer do that against LeBron James is just jarring.
It's wild to watch.
What is he actually doing mechanically to beat his defender?
Well, it requires incredible body control and processing speed. A step-through happens when an offensive player catches the ball in the post or the mid-range and gives a hard pump fake.
Okay.
Chet's shooting is so lethal that the defender, even a genius like LeBron, has to commit and jump to contest the shot.
Because if you don't jump, he drains it in your face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the moment LeBron leaves his feet, Chet keeps his pivot foot planted, violently steps underneath, and past the airborne defender with his other foot and lays it in. To execute that move with that level of footwork against LeBron James in a playoff game shows a level of confidence and skill you rarely see in a young big man.
Pulling up and stepping through LeBron, I mean, you could literally see the physical toll it took on the Lakers. Their misery in the second half was palpable through the television screen.
He completely unraveled at the seams.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron tried desperately to keep them attached, but he finished with 19 points on an inefficient 7 of 19 shooting.
He just looked exhausted.
He was exhausted. And Austin Reeves, who the Lakers rely on so heavily to create offense when LeBron rests, had 5 turnovers and looked completely overwhelmed by the length and speed of the Thunder's defensive pressure.
They had zero answers. And what's absolutely craziest to me, what really illustrates the Grand Canyon-sized gap between these two franchises right now, is that OKC is doing this with a 13-man rotation, and they don't even have Jalen Williams playing.
That's the craziest part.
Right. J-Dub is sitting out, and they still have 13 guys who can step onto a playoff floor, execute their system flawlessly, and run the Los Angeles Lakers completely out of their own gym.
It is a testament to phenomenal visionary roster construction. The Thunder are now on a historic 7-0 playoff run.
Incredible.
They haven't dropped a single game in the postseason. They look completely out of the Lakers league, and frankly, they look like the overwhelming favorite to take on the championship.
So naturally, this brings up the billion-dollar question for the rest of the league. How does a team look at the Lakers, who are stranded in the mud, surviving on nothing but the ghosts of their past, and look at the Thunder, who have engineered this unstoppable, deep juggernaut, and try to replicate that success?
Everyone wants to know.
Right. How do you build an OKC?
Well, the blueprint is remarkably simple in theory, but agonizingly difficult to execute.
Which is?
You build through the draft, you find elite talent, and you develop them relentlessly.
Ah, the draft.
Which brings us perfectly to today, because today is the NBA Draft Lottery in Chicago.
Yes, draft lottery day. I mean, for half the league, this is without a doubt the most important day of the calendar year.
Easily.
It is the day that dictates the entire trajectory of your franchise for the next decade. And for you listening right now, you need to understand that the stakes this year are completely off the charts.
They really are.
This 2026 draft class isn't just considered good. Scouts are calling it a transformative generational class. We are talking about true franchise-altering talent at the top of the board.
Absolutely. You have A.J. DiBanza, who projects as an elite do-it-all wing who can score from anywhere.
A beast.
You have Darren Peterson, a dynamic, game-changing point guard. Cameron Boozer, a physically imposing front court star with incredible pedigree.
Sure.
Caleb Wilson, a high upside forward with massive two-way potential. The sheer depth of elite top-tier talent means that landing a top 4 pick this year is the equivalent of finding a golden ticket.
It's life-changing for a franchise.
It instantly changes your franchise's timeline.
And because these picks are so outrageously valuable, we have some fascinating high-drama scenarios playing out with the ping pong balls today. Specifically, I want to talk about the brutal situation between the Indiana Pacers and the LA Clippers.
Oh, this specific scenario is where the business of basketball gets incredibly ruthless.
Nicely.
The Pacers previously traded their first-round pick to the Clippers, but they smartly put top 4 protection on it.
Okay, so what does that actually mean?
What that means mathematically is that today the Pacers have a 52.1% chance for their ping pong balls to land in the top 4.
So a little better than a coin flip.
Exactly. If they do, Indiana keeps the pick. They get to add a potential superstar like Dibanza or Boozer to a team that already has Tyrese Halliburton running the show.
But, and there is a massive but here.
But if that pick falls anywhere between number 5 and number 9 in the lottery order, the protection drops off, and the pick conveys entirely to the LA Clippers.
Picture being in that room in Chicago today. You've got billionaires, general managers, head coaches sweating through their tailored suits, people whose entire careers and livelihoods depend on the trajectory of these franchises.
The tension must be unbearable.
Right. And it all hinges on the brutal, unapologetic randomness of a plastic ping pong ball bouncing around in a clear machine.
It's crazy when you put it like that.
I mean, the Clippers could walk out of that room tonight with the 5th overall pick, a brand new franchise savior, or they could walk out with literally nothing to show for it. It's binary. It's terrifying.
It is the ultimate high-stakes gamble, and we've seen how a single bounce of a ball changes NBA history. Just look at the Washington Wizards today.
Sure.
They have a 14% chance at the number 1 overall pick.
No.
Imagine pairing a talent like A.J. DiBanza with their young core and the veteran presence they've acquired. It accelerates their rebuild by 5 years.
Wow. Now, I promised our casual Bulls fans listening that we would address the hometown situation.
Because we have to.
We will keep it brief but hopeful. The Bulls are currently sitting at number 9 in the lottery standings. Mathematically, they have a 4.5% chance at landing the number 1 overall pick and a 20.3% chance at jumping up into the top 4.
We're all crossing our fingers.
We are all keeping our fingers absolutely crossed. It's a long shot, sure, but hope springs eternal on lottery day.
And there is a noticeably new, optimistic energy around the Bulls franchise right now.
Definitely.
Bulls legend Tony Kukoc is actually representing the team on stage for the lottery, which is a fantastic nostalgic touch.
Love seeing him up there.
But the real structural shift is happening behind closed doors with their new head of basketball operations, Bryson Graham.
I am fascinated by Graham's approach because he was talking to the press recently and he laid out exactly what his drafting philosophy will be using this specific acronym, SLAP.
Yes, SLAP. It stands for size, length, athleticism, and physicality.
SLAP.
He has made it abundantly clear to his scouting department that he only wants two-way players who can impose their physical will on the defensive end of the floor.
And I want to pause on this because if you think about everything we just broke down today regarding the playoffs, that SLAP philosophy is the exact blueprint for surviving the modern NBA.
Exactly.
Why is this specific combination of traits, size, length, athleticism, physicality suddenly the biggest market inefficiency in basketball?
Because the playoffs are a completely different sport than the regular season.
Totally different.
In the regular season, you can hide an undersized guard on defense. You can get away with a finesse player who doesn't like contact.
Because teams don't have time to game plan for you.
Right. But in a 7-game playoff series, opposing coaches will hunt your weaknesses mercilessly.
Like Harden on Duncan Robinson.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
If you have a small guard on the floor, an elite offense will run 15 consecutive pick and rolls to force a switch,
Right.
isolate that small guard onto a monster like LeBron or Shai, and completely break your defense.
Yep.
Size and length prevent that mismatch hunting. Athleticism allows you to recover when rotations break down.
And what about the physicality piece? Because that feels like a direct response to how the referees officiate the postseason.
Exactly. The whistle changes in the playoffs. Referees swallow their whistles and allow a much more physical game.
They let them play.
If your team relies purely on finesse, you will get bullied off your spots. Look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. Why do they suffocate teams like the Lakers?
Because they have guys who fit that SLAP profile.
Because every single guy they bring off their bench embodies it. They are long, they are athletic, and they embrace physical contact. Look at the Detroit Pistons staying alive by using Oscar Thompson and Max Strus to physically batter Cade Cunningham full court.
Right.
Physicality dictates the terms of engagement. Graham understands that if you lack those 4 traits, you simply cannot survive in May and June.
It really is an evolutionary arms race out there. And the draft lottery is the laboratory where you get the DNA to mutate your franchise into a legitimate contender.
That's the great way to look at it.
If the Bulls, or any team tonight, hits on a player who embodies that SLAP profile, it accelerates their rebuild exponentially. They stop being the hunted, and they start being the hunters.
They do. But it also requires immense patience. Graham knows that building a structural foundation like OKC's doesn't happen overnight.
No, it takes years.
It takes multiple drafts, extremely careful asset management, and an unwavering commitment to a unified front office vision.
Yeah.
But the catalyst for all of it, the spark that lights the fire, starts today with the ping pong balls.
It really does. Everything we watched in April and May, all the heartbreak of the Lakers getting swept, all the survival instincts of the Cavaliers, it is all decided by what happens in a draft room in June and what happens with those ping pong balls today.
Everything comes back to the draft.
The margins of winning and losing an NBA championship are so incredibly thin on the court, and yet they are established years in advance by these exact draft decisions.
If we circle back to where we started, that core concept of margins today's lottery is the ultimate margin maker for the next decade of basketball.
Yeah.
It leaves us with a final provocative question for you to ponder as you watch the results tonight.
Let's hear it.
Will the random bounce of a ping pong ball bless a struggling franchise with the next A.J. Debinsa, instantly giving them the overwhelming depth and talent to become the next dominant force like the OKC Thunder?
Man, I hope so.
Or will bad luck leave them stranded in the mud, forced to survive on the absolute thinnest of margins, fading fast into irrelevance, just like the current Los Angeles Lakers?
Thank you for listening. Please comment, like, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Spotify, please leave 5-star review. It will help the channel grow. Until next time, please check our previous episodes.